Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Hey, welcome back to Between the Sheets. We're going to have a fun conversation. We're going to get all into technology and the intersection with sex today. I have a fabulous guest, Janelle, with us. She is a technical product manager. She is also a somatic intimacy educator. She is also an author and writes essays and information on the crossing between technology and sex and all of that connection. She has a fabulous mission that I just love. It's solving the burnout crisis plaguing the wellness and sex education community. I think that's amazing. And just knowing that the future of intimacy is human plus technology, which I also love that's on your site. So welcome and tell me more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for an awesome introduction. So just as you said, I started my career as a engineer doing front end work and so a little bit of back end work in the fintech and ed tech space.
Front to back work is very different in the sex world.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Found it to be just as boring and not as fun and really fulfilling as I really wanted it to be. And so about a year ago, I decided to kind of pivot towards my passion project, which on the side of doing my technical work, I was also throwing wellness and kink events for people in my community. And so I decided to really just pursue my degree in sexology and combine those two things to study digital relationships and digital intimacy, as well as artificial intimacy, which is a exploding field right now in terms of love and sex and relationships.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you didn't just limit yourself, that you found multiple passions and figured out how to put them all together and then live your best life. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I
Awesome.
mean, I saw this quote that said, everything you see in the world is just someone's passion project. And so it kind of really resonated with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about where you're seeing the intersection of technology and intimacy. Is it different apps and things that you're talking about? Is it toys and products? Talk to me about what that is for you.
Yeah. So I would say that we've been in the space of digital intimacy for a little while now. Digital intimacy covers pretty much anything that uses technology to help facilitate our relationship. So that could be anything from dating apps. Instead of,
Mhm.
getting introduction through your parents or through your friends or through your
Mhm.
colleagues or, anyone that you meet in your physical day-to-day life, we've began to get introduced to our lovers and our forever partners via
Mhm.
apps, right? And one of the side effects of our digital intimacy with dating apps has also led for an increase of long distance relationships. And so long distance
Mhm.
relationships are also a bit of a form of digital intimacy because we spend a lot of our time connecting over the phone or computer or over any type of technology, really. So I would say that that's kind of a pretty normalized part of what that intersection of intimacy and tech.
Mhm.
I would say actually increasingly over the last couple of years, pretty much has been around artificial intimacy, building
Okay.
out relationships with AI, what that might
Okay.
look like and what that might do to the intimacy landscape as a whole.
Okay. So is that like developing a personal relationship to an AI bot or something like to
Mhm.
that degree? Or is that okay? That's what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Explain, yeah, explain more of that.
exactly what it sounds
Yeah.
like. So there's platforms like called Joy AI. It used to be called Eva AI. There's also other platforms like Replica, Characters AI that allow folks to create personas using artificial intelligence and then exchange very intimate and sensual sexual messages between the two to the
Okay.
point of developing relationships with them. In fact,
Interesting.
research just came out the other day that said about a third, I want to say about 33% of Gen Z have had some sort of intimate relationship with an AI. And that number is just really increasing, especially as technology gets even more advanced and even more intricate. We, as human beings, we are pre-programmed to respond to empathy shown towards us. We are pre-programmed to respond to, just signals of
Hmm.
connection. And
Yeah.
so as technology continues to develop, we'll have a harder and harder time being able to distinguish between the two. My personal theory, not to I know for some folks
Yeah.
when they hear our intimacy, their immediate thought is like, AI is trying to take everything, even my wife. Whereas I think my personal theory is that what will happen is something very similar to what happened with sexuality when it came to expanding amongst kink and any other kind of
Mm.
alternative lifestyles, which is
Mm.
there will be a group of people who full heartedly prefer AI relationships.
Mhm.
I think that that would be a minority personally. And then there will be
Okay.
probably a larger majority of people who listen, the human to human relationship is where they're at, and that's what they prefer. And then there's going to be a kind of a gradient in between
Mhm.
of folks who date human beings and develop relationships with human beings. And that's even their preference, but they are
Mhm.
open minded to the idea of getting their intimacy from artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
And so that it starts to open up those questions of if you do have a relationship with artificial intelligence, does that mean that you're single? And
Mm.
do you identify with that, with the concept of being single? And if you
Mhm.
don't, then does that mean you're open to being non monogamous? Like there's this whole kind of like very theoretical
Yeah.
identity shifting when it comes to artificial intelligence. But yeah, I don't think that it's like everyone's going to start trying to date an AI. I think
Mhm.
what will really end up looking like is almost like a buddy or some sort of lover,
Mhm.
especially for those who are in between relationships.
Sure. Yeah, or I'm thinking of like when I first hear this, it's kind of like that's weird, right? Because it's new and it's
Yeah.
different. It's not weird, it's just different. And I start to think about, well, we used to have phone sex operators, right? And you didn't know them and you would call and talk to them. So how is that really any different than having a computer talk back to you? And
Mhm.
especially if it's one that you get to create the personality and their attributes that you're looking for in a person anyways. Now you're like modeling a person that you really want to spend time with and be intimate with. So I like that for that.
Mhm.
I get what you're saying about, the crossover of if you're in a relationship or not with the AI. And
Mhm.
then also, my brain goes to if you are in a relationship with a human and you
Mhm.
explore AI.
Yeah.
And now, is that cheating or is
Yep.
that allowing you to stay monogamous without
Mhm.
stepping out? So yeah, it's very fascinating. Like, I love this conversation. Milo is all up in our business
I know,
tonight.
that's okay.
Uh, as he just, he hasn't had enough snuggles apparently today, and he just needs to be all up in our business.
Yeah. Well,
But
that brings me to the other, I guess, one of the points that is distinct about, I guess, human and AI relationships is that physical component, right?
mhm,
That cuddles. And
yeah.
so my general perspective when it comes to that is at the end of the day, we're still human, right?
Mhm.
And so we do still need that physical, energetic presence of another human
Yeah.
being. But just as there is a spectrum of the type
Mhm.
of physical intimacy you can have with a lover and with
Mhm.
other people. I think that for those who may particularly maybe prefer AI relationships or those who just, have them, even if
Mhm.
it's not as a preference, that they will need to go and get their physical connection in
Mhm.
other places.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that might look something like having more physical connection, cuddles with friends, so platonic
Mhm.
friends. There are spaces called like cuddle spaces. There are cuddle professionals. So I
Mhm.
can absolutely see cuddle professionals getting a massive boost in sales coming up in the
Yeah.
next couple of years. And then also just broadly speaking, sex workers as a whole.
Mhm.
And then I can also, again, like I said, see folks who do want that AI relationship, but then also still want the physical. And so they will go and get that physical. And then back to our point about like, what does that look like? Are you cheating? Are you not
Mhm.
monogamous? Are you like, how do you really contend with the presence of AI in that relationship? I actually just read this article that talks about, and I'm happy to send it to you, but it
Be
talks
great.
about very specifically women and their AI boyfriends. I think a lot of times we
Mm.
talk about this and it's like AI girlfriend, it's very like
Yeah.
man versus like digital girl. But
Yeah.
there is a vast amount of women who are also participating in this as well. And
Hmm.
so the one of the women in the article was talking about how she has a husband, her husband knows about the AI and he's okay with it. And that's how and
Yeah.
she still, from a self-identity purpose, identifies herself as monogamous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another group of people that I think, or a couple groups of people that I think it would be really good for are people who have been out of the dating market for a while and don't really remember how do I have these conversations, getting comfortable talking about sex again, all those things. So I'm thinking maybe like somebody who's been married for 25 years and gets a divorce or a spouse passes away. And then the other group that I think it would be really good for is someone who's coming out of a trauma or a burn situation and now you look different. You lost
Oh,
an arm
interesting.
in the war, something like that. And you haven't had to have those conversations with people yet in
Yeah.
dating situations. So, I one time I went on a date with a guy who was born with cerebral palsy. He told me he had a very small limp. And when I met him in person, it was a very significant limp. And I think I'm just in my head as we're talking, I'm like, well, maybe if he had had an opportunity to talk through that with AI, maybe he would have realized that being accurate about your description is very important because I felt like I had been lied to. He felt
Mhm.
like he had been truthful. And, like some of my favorite activities are hiking and things like that. I have a 3-story house that has tons of stairs in them
The
that
lifestyle is not it doesn't quite match.
right. It wouldn't be compatible. And so maybe people who have been through significant things,
Mhm.
having an AI to talk through, to practice conversations with, feel what it feels like to be intimate with someone, have them ask those questions about, your past and talk about sex, talk about your STI testing, things like that maybe you haven't had those conversations with humans before because you've been married forever or whatever. I can really see how that might help.
Yeah, and there's kind of this perspective that with the AI, there's no judgment, right? There's
Right.
no is a bit of a black box, which is a double-edged sword, right?
Mhm.
Human relationships are messy.
Yeah.
They don't go exactly as you think they're going to go. Even the most amount of
Mhm.
planning in a conversation, emotions get in the way. Both emotions,
Sure.
both needs. It's not as I think clearly defined as what
Mhm.
artificial intimacy could look like.
Mhm.
Which is where some of the work I really want to start developing is like what are the skills if you're someone who wants to maintain the skills to manage a human to human relationship, but you also have a relationship with AI, what are the top line skills that you need to
Mm.
continuously develop? You know,
Yeah.
things like conflict resolution.
Mm.
Conflict resolution with AI. I mean, it might get. They talked about it might get mad at you, but like after a couple messages, it's over.
Right.
I've never had a relationship with someone where after a couple messages it's just over.
Right.
Even if you agreed, you still have that cooling off period. Like
Right. Right.
I'm gonna go hang out over here. You're gonna go hang over there. We're cool. I just need a little space.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Those type of skills and being able to identify that, whereas, like, if you've only really been able to, I guess, conflict resolute with an AI,
Mhm.
it still is going to acquiesce to your needs. It's going to get it by the next day, it's over it, full
Yeah.
stop. It might not even remember
Right. Yeah, and they're not gonna bring it up, like, "Remember 3 weeks ago when you said this?
Right.
Now I'm not sucking your
No.
dick." Like, like, it's not gonna happen. So, yeah,
Yes.
I think there's definitely a place for it, and it's going to be very interesting to watch the development and how that happens. It's interesting because, like, I watch my children, our young adults, and their difference in ability to communicate because they grew up in a much more vast technology than I did, right? When I
Mhm.
was in grade school, middle school is when email and the internet came out.
Yeah.
And so my kids have had it since day one,
Right.
and they had their iPads and stuff very early on, and they've had phones much younger than I ever had a phone. And the phone does every freaking thing that it
Ev
can do.
It's really not a phone, it's really just a mini computer, it's not
It
a phone.
is 100%. So, but some of their interpersonal skills then are lacking, or the way that they want to talk to me is how they would text someone. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting to think about that. And then the AI intimacy, I wonder if that ends up changing how people interact and talk and the way that they say things.
Yes, I would argue that that's probably already starting to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and again, that's kind of where my like the niche of what I'm trying to do is like for those who like want to retain those skills. So because
Yeah.
there's you are as human beings, we are impacted by everything that we interact with. If I spent all day talking to someone who knows and understands Spanish, I will likely pick up a little bit of that accent. I will
Hmm.
likely pick up understanding of some of those words and then talk back and reflect back to them,
Hmm.
how they're communicating with me. With an AI, it's also really important to understand who or what built this system to begin
Hmm.
with, Same way we understand like, oh, well, what are their parents like? And what kind of household did they grow up in? What's their background? I think you can translate that to artificial intimacy as well because these aren't programs that are built in a vacuum and they're
Hmm.
not neutral. I think technology as
Sure.
a whole is not neutral. Technology takes on the values, opinions, and point of view of the person that is making it.
Yeah.
So I say that to say, like, if an individual is building a relationship with an AI, how that AI is talking to them and how they do that
Hmm.
back and forth will have an impact onto the other places of their lives. And
Yeah.
if they don't want that or they want to mitigate that type of impact, they will need to develop or be very conscious of some of the things that they need to continuously work on.
Hmm. Wow, that's so fascinating. I love that. And I
Yes.
think, I'm sitting here thinking about different people that could really benefit from this. I mean, all of us could to some degree and in some way, right? But I think too, when you're ready to explore different types of relationships, or maybe you're realizing that, you've mostly been heterosexual and maybe there is some inclination to a different, whether it's bisexual or homosexual, whatever, or open relationships and you want to try and have multiple people but you're not really quite sure because there's jealousy and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Which is on another episode. You guys can go watch that one. But that's, I can see kind of playing with this and getting some ideas and some sense of whether or not this is the right way for you or whatever before you're really interacting with live humans. Like maybe you do interact with two different AIs and you see what does it feel like to have two quote unquote partners at the same time? How do I feel? How does that make, like,
How do
and
you
you're
spend
not
your time?
right,
How do you spend
right.
your
How
time?
do you
Because
balance
it's a
that
lot.
out?
There's
Yeah.
only 24 hours in the day.
Yes.
If you
And you gotta
spend
work and you gotta eat and you
You have
gotta
to
sleep.
work and you have to eat and you have to do laundry. And so as a woman who is non-monogamous, that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned in my non-monogamous journey was that I could not be everywhere all at once. And I still had
Yeah.
like things to do in my own day-to-day life that I couldn't just pick up 5 boyfriends.
Right.
and
Doggone it.
And so I really had to learn time management was like the biggest skill that I learned and understanding my capacity. And so
Yeah.
same thing if you're going to practice that with an AI, if you're going to spend 6 hours talking to it, What else are you doing in the day? Where is that
Right.
taking? Because that 6 hours was going to something else before.
Right.
How are you then reallocating that time? That's one of the things that I have seen, unfortunately, in some of the threads and things I've seen is, like, folks are
Mhm.
spending all day talking to these AIs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, even in a human relationship, if you spent all day talking to your husband, you spent all day talking to your wife, after some time, people will say that that's not a healthy way to
Right.
manage your relationship, right? That's not
Right.
specific to AI. That's specific to relationships as a whole. I
Right.
think, as because there's not too much, I guess, guidance in the way of artificial intimacy, we kind of use it the same way we use our phones, which also
Mhm.
probably shouldn't be using it all day. But
Right.
much of our work and our lives are on our
Yep.
phones, but when it comes to very specifically talking to some sort of AI chatbot or AI lover,
Mhm.
that there needs to be a healthy space for yourself and for the other
Mhm.
important things in your life, and that's like a relationship constant, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're developing this AI thing and you're developing an app for it, would you build in time restrictions, or you can only reply every so often, or something that the person themselves can set to help keep them accountable to boundaries?
Yeah, I've thought about that as well. Like, would you put in some sort of like natural cadence, right? Instead of
Mhm.
getting an immediate response, maybe get a response every 10 minutes. Like
Yeah.
someone who, if you're texting, unless they're right there on your phone, you might get
Right.
a response every 5, 10 minutes. Maybe the next hour, you'll get a response.
Right. Yeah.
It's something to think about. I think that I would also potentially consider, like I said, the time restraints. I don't know, it's a slippery slope. So with the
Yeah.
time restraints, it's kind of like set by who and why.
Mhm.
Like, how do you determine like how much time to spend
Right.
with another?
Yeah.
Maybe more so just the same way you get on like TikTok and they're like, you've been scrolling for you notice you've been scrolling for
Netflix pops up and says, "Are you
Are
still
you
watching this
are you
show?"
still here? Maybe something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah.
So again, that's something to consider, and it goes back to who is building these applications. Why are they
Mhm.
building these applications? That's also if you because there's different platforms. There's Replica, there's Character, there's Joy AI. I believe Joy AI has um, quite a bit of sexologists or at least, professionals on staff, which is
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
I know that I think Elon Musk just came out with his own, and I was like, "I don't
Okay.
know if you wanna trust Elon Musk."
I'll leave that up to each of you listeners.
I don't know. I personally would not recommend, but
So, when you're interacting with these AI bots,
Mhm.
can you FaceTime with them, or is it all like texting?
You can FaceTime with them, you do build up for some of them. I think
Okay.
that's the other thing too, we're living in a capitalist world, right? So if you pay a
Yeah.
premium
That's right.
you
You get
can
more things.
also create your own character. And
Okay.
so a lot of them, yes, some of them are just conversation. Some of them you do have a physical person that you create.
Okay.
There are some apps where it's a little more virtual reality, like you could take a picture and like crop them into things.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are
There's
making some interesting Christmas cards. Okay.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing too, like it's an ever-changing field, it's evergreen right now.
Right.
And so if that's where we are right now, like, what will it look like in 5 years? What does it look like
Yeah.
in 10 years, you know?
Right. Right. That's really cool.
Wow.
I really hadn't gotten into the artificial intimacy stuff. There's so much technology in the sexual wellness world and so much improvement in what I like to refer to as the sexual wellness tools versus toys, because I think that makes them sound a little bit more user friendly. That some people are like, oh, I don't have toys. Well, okay, well, these are also tools that can
They're
help
also
you have better sex
they're
and
also
have you
cool.
less pain, better erections, all the things.
Mhm.
So I've been very aware of that side of
Mhm.
the sexual wellness community and technology and, being able to have a vibrator or a fleshlight with an app that your partner is controlling when they're over in California
Mhm.
and you're in Washington, D.C. or whatever.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that more technology is coming into this space, that more research is coming into this space. But I really hadn't thought very much about artificial intimacy and those relationships that you can create. I'm just absolutely loving this conversation with you. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Where did it kind of like come from? Like, who really started pushing it towards the intimacy side of things versus just like my Alexa robot?
I don't think there was any one person that was pushing towards that in
Hmm.
particular. As humans, we naturally gravitate anything towards sex and new
Hmm.
things. I don't know if you know, like even for our cell phones, right? I wouldn't say cell phones,
Hmm.
landlines.
Yeah.
At first, landlines were only particularly found in people who were in homes that were businessmen, those
Hmm.
who are really top politicians. One of the reasons why the landline became more and more popular within homes was that it allowed people to call their phone girls.
Hmm.
So the phone sex was a big reason
Okay.
why landlines started even exploding in homes. And then they're like, oh yeah, we
Interesting.
can call everyone else. Yeah, but like,
But like Linda
yeah,
is who I'm calling right now.
Susan is waiting on me tonight.
That's right. That's right.
And so, and it was a discreet way to kind of engage in that type of play. And
Yeah.
so, and that's just one example of many, like
Yeah.
Snapchat started because it was an opportunity to share really quick vids and pictures with your
Hmm.
friends, and then very quickly turned into the sexting app
Yep.
shortly after, right? And so
Yep.
we naturally use sex comes so natural to humans. So
Yeah.
we use technology in a way that help facilitate our pleasure and help facilitate our joy, whatever form that comes in. So, and when it
Hmm.
comes to AI, I really don't think that it was anything, I guess, specific. That's one. Two,
Yeah.
the sci-fi world has been talking about this for a very long time. The sci-fi and gamer world have been talking, about AI girlfriends and things like that, AI intimacy. I wouldn't say they called it that, but
Yeah.
I think the artificial intimacy is like a new label, which personally I'm not even sure if they really identify it that way. Like
Hmm.
artificial AI intimacy is really catchy, but I'm not sure if they if that's the same way they kind of envision it,
Sure.
view it. But yeah, so I don't think there's
Yeah,
any.
because I mean, when you talk about like video games and stuff, immediately I think of Grand Theft Auto and that they had hookers in there and you could go and have sex with these hookers. And,
Yeah,
that was one reason why when my son was young, I did not let him have
like,
Grand Theft
no.
Auto. We're not doing that. You got to be a little bit older for that one, bud.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It really has been around for a while and it's just, changing, I guess, and
Mhm.
developing as it goes along.
Yeah, becoming more personalized,
Mhm.
and more of like that is the point. Like it's not just
Right.
within a game or a
Mhm.
thought exercise in a movie.
Sure.
Something that is coming up around now, which even the timing of this entire kind of blow up with AI girlfriends comes at the point where there's a loneliness epidemic,
Mhm.
comes at the point where we as a society are very disconnected. It comes at the point where people are tired of dating apps, swipe fatigue, you know? And so there's this dichotomy of some people like, cool, I'm tired of the dating apps, I'm tired of the
Mhm.
swiping. I'm gonna go backwards. I'm gonna go ask my friend to introduce me to their friend and see if that works, or I'm just gonna
Mhm.
go out to a bar. And then there are some people who are like, "Well, I already did that, or I'm not comfortable doing that, so I'm gonna go over
Mhm.
here and I'm gonna go to the AI intimacy
Mhm.
piece." Even Joy AI just had a billboard in Times Square, very directly targeting dating apps. And it had like a
Okay.
thumb, and it was like all wrapped up, like bruised thumb.
Yeah.
It's like tired of swiping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like join Joy AI. And that's how I ended up finding it. I was like, "Huh." I
Okay.
was thinking, "Oh, new dating app. Okay,
Yeah.
cool." I pulled it up and I was like, "This isn't a dating."
Oh,
Oh. And they have a billboard in Times Square.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really, I've done episodes on here about the shame revolving around sex and how we live in a purity culture and things like that. So
And that too.
anytime there's this movement to get sex out to be a normal, shame-free, non-judgmental part of the conversation, I'm all for it. I don't care whether it's my cup of tea or not. I am all
Mhm.
for getting the dialogue out there and talking about it and I think that's the only way to get people more comfortable with sex and pleasure. We talk about sex to procreate, we talk about sex to please our partner, but it's also about our pleasure. And I think what you're saying with this AI is really getting to live that pleasure and getting to, figure out, how do you like to be talked to? How do you like to talk to this person? What feels good, what doesn't, without any of the shame and guilt and judgment that you might get from a partner. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, exactly. And then ideally, you would take it to a partner. And if
Mhm,
not, then, it opens up that question going back to, well, then how are you servicing your own human needs? Because
mhm,
again, you're not an AI. You still need
right.
water. And I kind of compare it as like the electric car versus,
Mhm,
you know, gas car, right?
yeah.
They're both still cars, they just need different things, right?
Mhm,
So, as a human being, if you're someone that needs that physical touch, physical intimacy, are you getting it through a massage therapist? Are you going to
mm,
a cuddle specialist? How are you finding it in other
yeah,
ways, right? And, the average person, we're in the sexuality field, so we hear about these things. The average person is not necessarily thinking that. At best, they might
right.
think of, "I'm gonna get a stripper," or I'm a get
Right.
some sort of other sex worker. But there's very specific, niches within the sexology field that caters very specifically to physical intimacy that's not
Mhm.
sex.
Yes.
And so I'm very interested to see how those 2 kind of coincide and
Yeah.
really hope that the messaging around it becomes, how do we make this healthy and not just
Mhm.
how do we get rid of this? Because usually the
Yeah.
immediate reaction is, this is weird, this is crazy, this is coming for all of our human relationships, and let's get rid of it immediately.
Yeah.
It's what happened with kink, it's what happened with non-monogamy,
Mhm.
and even then, people are still fighting that fight slowly. At least
Yep.
we're not being, clinically diagnosed. And
Right.
that's the other thing too, is that I think folks, it ends up in that space of like, should we clinically, are these people insane? Should we clinically
Right.
diagnose them for talking to, a non-human, let's talk inanimate object,
Right.
you know?
Right. Right.
And
Well, it's
so
not as bad. I did see a commercial for a show coming up where a woman is in a relationship with a carnival ride. So I feel like this is an improvement over that, whereas that may be a clinical diagnosis. This not necessarily.
not necessarily, though. Again, so I've seen some back and forth on the interwebs. I mean, the internet
Yeah.
is not always I would say, the kindest place
Yes.
to be.
Yes. Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
as a professional who's like studying this information, both on the technology side, which was why
Mhm.
I'm really glad I study engineering. Back then, I wasn't really
Yeah.
studying engineering.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now, understanding the technology side of it, and then also coming in now with like a understanding of sex and relationship, I'm like, I
Mhm.
see the vision.
Yeah.
There's always ways that people are going to abuse technology. There's
Sure.
always ways that people abuse relationships. I was like, we now need to start talking about less of, is it coming, and more of, how do we make this healthy for the vast amount of people? What
Yeah.
information, what skills do they need to know? What things do they need to practice in order to make this an addition to their life and not a detriment?
Sure. Because it's not all good or all bad.
Yeah.
It's a good and bad, just like anything in life. I mean, you can't go have 27 donuts in a day and be healthy. You might be
Yeah.
able to have one here and there, right? So, it's not all good or bad. And I think there's a spectrum there of where you can find, a healthy balance and things like that. But it's such a fascinating field.
It is. It really, really is. I'm glad to be kind of coming into the field now in this perspective
Hmm.
and in this time to really kind of hone in on a new type of connection, which is
Hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah, and I've always loved the idea that two things can be true at the same time.
Mhm.
This can be not for you and it's still okay. It's can be for you and not for your partner, or it can be for you and not something else. Two things can be true at the same time. And so I think that is so important when it comes to AI and this intimacy within AI,
Mhm.
that whether it's right for one individual, it might not be right for another, or it might cause an addiction for one person where for another person they have good boundaries, right?
Yeah.
So two things can be true. It can be good for some and bad for others. It can be a release for some and it can be daunting for somebody else. I mean, but I think that's why it's such a great tool is because you can experiment with it without hurting anybody's feelings, without hurting yourself. You just kind of play with it and see. And if it's for you, awesome. Play with it. Go
Yeah.
all in. Have your fun.
Totally.
And if it's not, say, okay, this isn't for me, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's weird. And it doesn't mean it's not right for somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's true through so many things in sexual wellness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think even coming into this space, again, as someone who's non-monogamous, I mean, I've heard all types of things.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
Non-monogamy. And so even for myself, I had to realize, like, as someone stepping out of the norm, just because I'm stepping out of the norm doesn't mean I now accept everything outside of the norm. There are still
Right.
some things that are still not for me. And I was like, oh, I thought I was really open-minded. Like, I'm just going to try it all. And I did try it all and found that
Hmm.
I don't like it all, just some
Yep.
things.
Yeah.
Some not
Absolutely.
as norm things, and so, yeah, I can definitely see that with folks. I think the only other concern I've seen with, some of these AI companions or relationships has been some of the social scripts the AI has been built around. So what's really popular, particularly amongst, like, younger generation is, of course, everyone loves the bad boy, and so now we have bad boy AIs.
Right.
And so it just to me, all I saw was like, it's the same conditioning all over again. How is this any different
Right.
than these romance novels? And we read them
Hmm.
and we think that's how relationships are going to go until you have the bad boy in college and you're like, that was the worst 2 years of my life,
Right. Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
You mean my gardener doesn't just come in and make me his
Right.
whatever? He doesn't
I
take
don't
me in
have
the
a hot
greenhouse?
pool. I don't have a hot pool boy I can like Google at and like
Right?
objectify.
The UPS man just delivered a package and didn't come in for my package? Like, what?
Exactly. So yeah, I see folks who are like condemning it. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is if we had better scripts, if we had the key is sex education,
Yes. Yes.
if we had those things and these things wouldn't feel so scary.
Right.
It would just be an example of maybe what not to do. Or
Yes.
this is not real life. This might be okay here in a creative
Mhm.
outlet here, but that's not real life. Or or that's not kink. I know a lot of people
Yeah.
kind of bring that into the bad boy is just kink. And I'm like,
Mhm.
also not one to one either.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's very fascinating. I'm really interested to see where this goes and how it develops over time. And, I hope
Yeah.
that it allows people to develop better relationship skills and kind of find maybe what they're truly looking for. Maybe they create different profiles and talk to them different ways and be like, oh, I actually really like this kind of a profile more than that kind of a profile. And I really thought I wanted the second one, you
You
know?
want that one, which means that
Yeah.
you still need the skill of breaking up with another
Right.
person. You still kind of need that skill of like your AI, the technology underneath it changes so that the personality behind your
Mhm.
relationship changes. But that's still true in real life. Who you
Yeah.
marry at 20 is not going to be the same person at 40, at 60, at 80.
Yeah.
So these
Absolutely.
skills are still needed. We're still at the beginning of all of it. So
Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. I am so glad you were here today. This was an awesome
yeah, no, thank you
conversation.
so much for inviting me. I'm like, gotta get me
Yeah.
on a soapbox to talk about it. I'm sure
No, I love it.
my husband's smart to talk to me. He's like, okay, go talk to somebody else.
Good job. Well, I'm glad I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Well, good. Awesome. And we can include the information about the apps that you talked about and anything
Mhm.
else that you want our listeners to have access to in the show notes.
Yeah.
So listeners can look there. And
Yeah.
thank you again so much for being here. I really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
help.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
awesome. All right, everybody, go have some fun between the sheets. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and go have some fun between the sheets.